Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We're with Liberty Lass, still level 21 brute with 1.25 million influence, 521 experience needed to get to level 22. We're holding her at level 21 to finish the story arc that we are on and conclude our first season, so that we can then get to level 22 for season 2 and do our single origin enhancers. And now we have to once again recover the Psycho Chronometron. I thought we recovered it already, so I don't know what's going on, but we have to go find Arbiter Sands, and he is in some sort of an arachno space all the way over here. So off we go, and this will probably be the final episode of the season. I've said that 3 or 4 times because honestly, I did not remember this story arc being this. It's like as long as all the other story arcs combined, and I didn't remember it being this long. Um, Especially the one mission that I didn't record was really long, and it had like a bunch of assets I don't remember ever seeing. So I don't know if it's just here on Homecoming and it wasn't like this in Live and on Rebirth, that particular mission. I'm not really sure. So this is one of the newer cave designs. This came online when they created the Hollows. One thing I do want to clarify, because somebody did make a comment to point out that willpower was in the live game. Yes, I'm aware of that. When I say something is new, what I mean is not original to the launch version of the game, the first like year, pre-City of Villains, right? City of Villains, that material is new content relative to the launch version of the game. They added new archetypes. Originally, those archetypes could only be played on one side. So in the original version of City of Villains, when that came out, brutes, stalkers, corruptors, dominators, and masterminds could only be played in the Rogue Isles as a villain. There was no ability to make up a superheroic brute. People asked for it. It took them a long time to decide to put something like that into the game. I don't know. I don't really remember when they did that, but it was a while. And, in fact, there was and I talk about this in one of the final episodes, maybe the final episode with Silver Phoenix, so I don't want to belabor that and go through that story again, but when they created the City of Villains archetypes, they sort of had it in mind that they were going to be kind of almost like opposites or negative versions, anti-versions of the hero archetypes, with the expectation that players were going to do a lot of PvP, player versus player, and that the various archetypes would have an opposite that would be really good at kind of fighting against them, so that, for example, corruptors are sort of like negative defenders or whatever, and the idea was supposed to be that like a corruptor versus a defender would be a good fight because they'd kind of have each other's weaknesses or whatever. And, I don't know, I guess a tanker versus a brute would be a good fight. I'm not exactly sure what they thought was going to happen, but they kind of designed the archetypes to be kind of not the opposite, right? They didn't flip them. And because like a tanker is already a flipped scrapper with the secondary as the primary and the primary as the secondary, but they kind of mixed and matched them in a way that I think they were hoping that between stalkers and brutes versus scrappers and tanks, between corruptors and dominators against controllers and defenders, and masterminds against blasters, I think the thought was that this would make for some really cool PvP. And what the developers didn't anticipate was that, to be honest, people didn't really get that into the PvP in City of Heroes. There were a few folks who did it. There were some people who had fun with it. But the overwhelming majority of players that I knew and just didn't do it. And you can see that being the case even in these pirated servers, whatever you want to call it, the Homecoming and Rebirth and the other ones. As I understand it, this is true on all of them. The open PvP zones are a wasteland. And I think the reason that that's true is that what players really wanted to do was have a cool battle of like one superhero group against one super villain group. And that's really not the way the PvP zones are designed. They're really arranged more for just random open world combat. And so a lot of players didn't want to do that because you're just going to get hit from behind by a stalker or whatever, and the person's just trying to up their kill count. Whereas what people really want to do is have my superhero group and all my friends playing against your supervillain group and all your friends. And they actually created superhero and supervillain bases with the intention that that would actually be what would happen, right? The idea was supposed to be that there were these things called items of power, and if you put one in your base, it opened you up to having enemy, like members of the other faction, teleport into your base and attack. But that never actually worked, as far as I know. And I don't know if Homecoming ever tried to put that in the game and make it work, but in live, I don't think it ever worked, and they eventually abandoned the idea. And I think even that wasn't exactly what players wanted, right? We didn't want any random group of players who have exploits and that sort of stuff to build their character, or people who cheated or whatever and got way more influence than you should have at your level because of whatever nonsense they were doing in the game, coming into your base and raiding it and ripping out your item of power. What we really wanted was to be able to set up like predefined battles, right? Almost like a role-playing game session or whatever. What a lot of players wanted to pick the super group they were going to fight against, right? My villains against your heroes. And even some groups like mine would have liked to, we have a villain group and a heroes group, and we do like half and half and fight each other, like that's what we wanted to do. And they never really set the game up so that that kind of PvP was realistically possible, except maybe in the arena. And the arena wasn't very satisfying because it was sort of artificial. People really wanted to raid each other's bases, but they wanted to do it like almost by invitation, right? They didn't want it to be a sudden random raid when half your group isn't online, and they purposely wait until 3 in the morning while nobody's there and then raid your base for the item of power and take it away. That really wasn't the kind of fighting that we were looking for. And I don't think that the developers ever really understood that, and they really didn't make it so that the PvP was that way. And so instead, you ended up with just a bunch of random people randomly attacking each other on the street for like bragging rights. And I just feel like the majority of the City of Heroes player base just wasn't really interested in that. And the evidence for that is that the PvP zones were ghost towns for as long as I remember. I don't remember any time other than when they first came out. Obviously, people wanted to try them. But after, a few months, if that, people kind of seemed to realize, this is sort of pointless, and it's not really a lot of fun, and it's actually more fun to like run missions and do the architect and stuff like that than it is to do PvP in the open zones. And so the open zones were kind of ghost towns, much the way the hazard zones were, and I still think they are today. I still remember in City of Heroes when the game was live, and had gotten my martial arts super reflex scrap at a 50. And of course, when you go into the PvP zones, it will de-level you to whatever level the zone is. And they'd put these explorer badges, some of which you needed to get achievements or whatever, right, in the PvP zones to try and force you to go and do PvP. The typical developers were going to make you do this activity even if you don't want to, right? Because the thing you want, the thing that you actually want, which is the badge, you have to go in here to get, right? And so I remember, you've got 4 rows of inspirations, and I remember loading up on Lux with my character, who was super martial arts super reflex, and going into the zone, and I was just gonna super jump around. I had like the Vidiot map open where it showed where all the badges were, and I was just going to like super jump as fast as I could around the zone, and just run over the badge locations, and as soon as I was done, get out of there. And so what I did was I went in and I like chowed down on say 3 Lux, which at the time they were 25% each, so that gave me like 75% defense. And I thought, okay, a Stalker could probably still get me, but if I move fast enough, they won't be able to, because the Assassin Strike, the target had to stay still. And so I was just like frantically moving around the zone, hoping not to die, right? And what I realized was there wasn't anybody in there. I think I saw 1 or 2 people in the zone the whole time, and they were both heroes, so they weren't going to attack me. And that's when I realized, oh, I guess nobody's in here. And then I remember asking this friend of mine who I think had done a little bit of PvP when it first started, what's the story with the PvP zones? And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, I went in there to get badges, and it doesn't seem like there's anybody in there. And he was like, yeah, nobody goes in there anymore. I don't even go in there. Right? He wanted to do PvP, but he was like, yeah, it's boring. Nobody goes in there. And the other problem that they had was that I am not the only one who didn't really like the red side, right? When City of Villains came out, everybody went and made up villains, right? My whole super group, other than me, you never found anybody on blue side. I played red side with them, but when they weren't on, I kept soloing blue side to level up my tanker and some of my other characters. They completely abandoned the hero side and did red side, and oh, this is so much better for like 2 months, 3 months, right? Until they got their villain to level 50, and then they all went back to blue side, right? So it was like, yeah, City of Villains was more popular than City of Heroes when it first came out because it was new for like a couple months, maybe 4 or 5 months, and then everybody went back to playing City of Heroes, and red side was a ghost town. And that's continued to be my experience ever since, is that people just don't play villains that much. And I have a lot of theories for why that is. One of them is that I think it's actually very wearing on the soul, as it were. Even though this is a fiction and it's a role-playing game, it's very... It really kind of wears you down and sort of depresses you to just be the bad guy all the time. Now, City of Villains, you're not really being that much of a bad guy. You don't often kidnap people. You're actually rescuing one villain from another villain. And so it's not that bad, but it's just such a negative sort of character type that it's fun to play for a little while, but not for the long term. And I suspect that I'm not the only one who feels that way. But then on top of that, I think that it's also the case that a lot of people I know complained about the way the villain missions were done. A lot of people don't like the Arachnos layers. This one's okay because you can see in it. But like the really dark layer, a lot of people don't like those. A lot of people didn't like the way the zones were in the Rogue Isles. It's like all of the Rogue Isle zones are like fault line. That is to say, they're pseudo hazard zones, and there are no like nice zones. They're all kind of like hazard zones, and yeah, I think people got kind of tired of being in a hazard zone all the time, essentially, right? And so I don't know. I think there were a lot of issues with the design of that side of the game that made people not really like it. Now, on the other hand, Praetoria or whatever, the gold side, a lot of people love that. And I know in my both of my old super groups, they were a lot of people started out in Praetoria and then ended up in Paragon City. Now we have two Lux running, but we're being shot at with machine guns, so that's going to debuff us, so we better run a third Luck. This should make it very hard for them to hit me. They're definitely bringing my rage all the way up my fury. And you can see that I'm also being slowed down, it feels like, because my stuff is recharging a little slower. Maybe not. We got him. Oh, that's the problem. This guy's a lieutenant. I didn't realize that. And there is our ability to go to Ouroboros, this little yellow thing. I will play with that in a second as soon as we finish defeating this guy. One thing I do like, there's a little Jumbotron with Lord Arachnos or whatever, Lord Recluse. Right, that's Lord Recluse giving instructions to his cohorts. So we now have the ability to go to Ouroboros, which is quite nice. And now we're going to talk to Agent G. And now we have the finale. We're going to go help Penelope in. So, let me pause it here. I'm going to head back to Agent G to purchase some inspirations, and then we'll be on our way. Alright, folks, we are back. We're going to turn experience points back on and apply it. And now we're going to take the chopper and head to save Penelope Yin and destroy the Psychochronometron. So Penelope is going to be in trouble, and so the way this works is all the elite bosses come in together. But before we fight them, we want to save Penelope Yin. And hopefully that'll get us enough XP to then fight the bosses with the extra inspirations. So let's head up. There are the bosses, but what we want to do is save Penelope Yin. Here she is. Drone, go away. Oh, there's an elite boss right here, too. Oh, but he's fighting the other guys. So they're fighting each other, but we want to save Penelope Yin. And we have leveled up, so that should enable us to fight these guys with no problem. That's one. Where's the other one? I think Nocturne was in here too, no? Yeah, she's here. And this will be the end of this season. I will go ahead and show you the slotting of the enhancements once we get out of here. But then the next mission will happen in Season 2. I think there might be a badge for this if we defeat all three of them. Maybe not. I thought there was a badge for it, but I guess not. You get a bunch of enhancements, though. Look at that, and they're all level 25, guys. So that's pretty cool. And let's head out. That made it a little too easy, I guess. In retrospect, I should have just gone ahead and leveled up. Food for thought for next time. And now we complete, and now we get a huge story arc experience. And we get a bunch of reward merits. And we're now like 3 beads into level 22. Alright guys, I'm going to pause it here and head to one of the shops in Talos Island, I guess. And I'll bring you back when we're ready to buy some more enhancements. Alright, actually, not going to quite do that yet. Because I want to show you how Ouroboros works. So this thing goes every 5 minutes. You can run it. It stays for a few seconds. And anybody can use it, not just you, once it's down. And this takes us to Ouroboros. And wow, you can see there's a whole bunch of people here. Oops. And this is an interdimensional space. And there are missions you can do here and so on and so forth. But the main reason I came in here is because this little portal will take you to multiple different zones. So you can just hop straight to Talos Island. We don't have to like fly through Steel Canyon or Founders Falls or Fault Line or any of that. So we are here in Talos Island, and there should be an Explorer badge right there. There you go. And we want to go to the natural shop. So the way I always find that is, so here is the train station. Talos Island's super convenient, right? Because the train station is here. The base portal is here, right there. And then Wentworth is right behind. And then, if you just go straight back past Wentworth's, there are 3 shops right near each other. This is Freedom Corp. That has the Freedom Corps. They have trainer enhancements. This is the magic shop. It is called Pandora's Box. And then the natural shop is just down the street. Right here. Future Dynamics. And that is where we will buy our single origin enhancers. So let's take a look at what they're offering. And so it costs about 10,000 to buy the 30% single origin enhancers, the 33% Cowley's ring, which is accuracy, the earring, Li Tie Kuai's earring, which is damage, and then the shard, which is endurance, and so forth. So one of the changes on Homecoming, this is not on Rebirth, and it always drove me nuts that they don't have it because this makes it so much easier, is that they put in parentheses next to the in-character name of the thing what it does. Imagine if none of these are here, then you have to figure out, okay, which is defense buff, which is defense debuff. The colors and the symbols are supposed to tell you, but it's so hard to remember some of them, especially the ones that I don't do a lot, like fear. I can never remember. So remember I said it should take us about 800,000 influence to purchase a full set of single origin enhancers. But it may take a little less than that because we have some really nice ones right here. 2 damages, an accuracy, and endurance reducer. Oh yeah, and by the way, the Li Tie quad, that's dual origin. So the one thing you have to watch out for in these shops is they have both single and dual origin. So yeah, I'm actually wrong. It's 10,000 to buy the dual origin. The single origin is 20,000, right? 25,000, 30,000. That's why it costs so much, right? So it's a good thing I looked at this because I almost bought the dual origins, and I've been stupid enough before to buy a bunch of dual origins and go, oh man, I bought the wrong ones. So I'm going to buy the single origins, but I will do that paused, and then I'll bring you back once we've got everything set up. All right, folks, we're back. I'm going to do a little bit of an example at combat against these 2 guys, and then we will stop. But first, let's take a look at our enhancements. I've done everything, and we have, let's actually look here. We had about 1.3 mil. We have about 500,000. So like I said, it costs about 800K to fully enhance. This is everything. It's unnecessary stuff like flight and hover, which back in the old days you wouldn't have bothered to do. Putting run enhancements in Swift and jump and hurdle. I mean, I did it because we're flush. We now have a full set of enhancements. I'm super annoyed at this. And I probably will not upgrade these. I will probably rip these out. I like putting accuracy first. And I actually just dragged it into the wrong slot, which really irritates me. But anyway, so we have build up triple recharge enhanced. So it will now recharge every 45 seconds. Right? Barrage now recharges every 4.3 seconds instead of every 6, and so on. So we should be much better with our attack chain. We're doing a lot more damage. I didn't bother to put endurance reducers on our attacks because we do have both stamina and quick recovery, and I was incorrect. The stamina modifier, the endurance modification, is actually on the 33% scale, not the 20%. So I was incorrect about that. That same thing is true for run and jump speed, and so on and so forth. But you can see that the defense is on the 20% scale. It's 23% now because there were plus 3 levels to us. But when it's white to us, when we hit level 25, it'll be at a 20%. Health is also at 38%, and fly is at 38%. So we can fly faster, we can hover faster. And now what we're going to do is take on this Chief Swiper Freak Show and Warrior Bruiser just to demonstrate how we do with this much more enhanced character. We should absolutely bury these guys. There we go. And you can see things are recharging a little bit better, so I didn't need to resort to the grays. Eventually, these will all vanish from my hotbar because, you don't need them. All right, folks, I think we did a good job. We're level 22, and this is the end of Season 1. We will open Season 2 by... I'm going to go around off-screen and talk to all these contacts. They will give us new contacts. This guy is a current contact. Anybody in the old areas... We can do Mercedes. She'll probably talk to us now. But I got to talk to all the old contacts and see if they'll give us any new ones here. And I'll do that off screen because that's pretty tedious. And until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes. This is the end of Season 1, and we will start Season 2 in the next episode. So long, and be good.